Hey guys, it's Brett Ford here. I'm just going through, I have some notes here because I have probably one of the most important talks that I have to do right now. This is all about everything going on in the world. There's a lot of tension between left and right and the way the world is going. Um, it's difficult. It's difficult because we have so much misunderstanding. We have old ways and we have new ways, but the problem is both of them seem to lead to centralized control. With the left and the right, you have um, control through companies and monopolies, and then on the left, you know on the right side, and then on the left side, you have control through centralized power through government, and they're both. When people think of all of that type of fascism and all of that jazz, they're not really seeing that both the left and the right have control aspects where centralized power become power in a small amount, whether it's a group of companies and friends, high net worth individuals, and where they control the outcomes of the world, or again, another close group of friends who may not have companies, but who put their power through the government aspect. One's more government, and one's like government with friends. So they're all the same beast. It's all the same jargon going on. So what I want to talk about, though, is how we can, especially with things like the Epstein files and the release of all of this stuff, we're in a period spiritually where all this negativity has to come to light. And it's coming to light because we're shedding. We're shedding our old skin. We're upgrading to the new earth. We're doing all this stuff, and it has to come to light because it has to expose that negativity. Because we have to choose if it's something we're willing to accept going forward. Are we going to go down the same path, or are we going to design a new way of doing things? And when you actually look at it, if you're on left or you're on the right, if you're on either side of them, you're missing the point. You can look at things. You might have a pull in a certain direction. I have a pull myself to be more right because I like personal freedoms, and I think that that's necessary. But I'm an entrepreneur. I need more access. I want more space to flourish. Whereas somebody that's not like that needs a little bit less. They need a little more help. And so when we stop identifying with the sides and we start looking at these things on a larger picture, we can begin to recognize everything that's going on. So what I want to talk about first, and I have a bunch of notes. I've been going through trying to compile everything, so forgive me if I'm looking down on occasion. But there's things called strategic consciousness. And that's kind of the way I've been trying to look at the world. When we have strategic consciousness, essentially what that is I see it and I choose where my life force is going. That's sovereign awareness. That's strategic consciousness. We're not looking at something and saying, hey, I'm going to get involved. We're seeing it for what it is, but we're not putting our energy into it. We're not allowing it, because what ends up happening is if you go the other way, we're not denying the facts. We're not denying that the Epstein files exist. We're not denying those things. With denial, you say nothing bad is happening, and you just deny everything that's going on. You say it doesn't exist. That's not happening. Well, and we know it's happening. But what we're not doing is we're not choosing to put energy into that. We can understand it. We can watch the news. We can do these things, but we're not going to put our life force into it, because if we put our life force into it, that's when we end up having problems and creating more of that and feeding that system. And we don't want to feed that system. When it comes to fixation, this must be fought at all costs. We're going to fight tooth and nail. We're going to take these guys to jail. We're going to do all this stuff. We're going to, go hard against people. And that's my natural instinct, is to fight, is to go against the corruption and get angry about it. But that's also not necessarily the best path forward. Even though we have the eye for an eye and those types of phrases, it's like that's just not the way that it works. That's not the way to long-term power. It's so funny because in so many movies, we've been taught the framework. We've been taught that love beats everything. Now, love isn't passive. Love doesn't have to be passive. Love can hold things accountable. And I'm not saying that we should not hold things, people and systems accountable. But if we focus on that, what ends up happening is we don't end up moving forward the way we want to, and then we end up disappointed because as crappy as it is right now, the system is designed against us. And so going in that direction, and fighting tooth and nail, we're going to be disappointed because we're playing the house. You're in a casino and you're playing the house right now, and the chips are against you. So you will not get the outcome that you want, and you will have to settle for less. So we're not going to allow that, again, our energy to be placed in that. Corruption is not primarily ended by exposure. It's ended by irrelevance. Well, how do we make something irrelevant? How do we go through that? These systems, they feed on fear. So if we're giving them energy, what we're doing is, we're getting angry. We're getting in this state where they want us because they understand, like these people, they understand on the larger perspective how energy works. If you've seen them, even Epstein was talking about energy, and they all understand how it works. They understand the system. They've been playing this for years. They do rituals. It's like, without going down the rabbit hole, we might not want to go there. Again, we're just going to look at it with sovereign awareness. We're not going to, get sick to our stomachs and think about all the horrible things they're doing. We know they're doing horrible things, but we don't beat, we've got great people out there doing awesome work, stopping these horrible rings, and we support those. But we're not going to allow our energy to go there. Right now, for instance, you could look up any horrible number of things on the internet and just make yourself feel sick to your stomach. But is that helpful? Does that help you in your life and your family and your friends and your community? No, that just makes you feel bad. That feeds into that negative narrative. Now, if you want to if you're actually passionate about that thing, absolutely take action. I'm very passionate about kids. As I go through this process here, I've got 3 kids of my own, and I support all these people that are finding these pedophiles and all these things, and just like take them out. Like obviously get them off the streets. Don't allow them to do these things. But if you don't have that passion, just getting angry at it and support them with finances, support them with, there's ways to support people in positive ways to continue doing the great job that they're already doing. But you just getting angry at it and holding that negative energy, that does nothing. That just, again, it's just making you suffer. It's the same thing. It's like when somebody says something negative to you, and they forget about it, and you hold it for 30 years. You're somebody in grade school said, hurt your feelings, and then for the next 30 years it bothered you. You go back, or maybe they bullied you or whatever, and they didn't even think about it the whole time. It just affects you. And that's when you need to start understanding that all of these things are just affecting us on an individual level. When somebody goes out and they protest, when we're protesting all of these things, sure, protests can be a positive form. But when we allow them to become an extreme, anytime you start drifting, whether it's through religion, political ideology, all these things to extreme ends, we're not making progress. We're getting loud, we're getting angry, we're destroying things. That's not positive energy. That's not how we fix things. We fix things through our voice and our system and all of it. We can't do it that way. That's not how we succeed as a society. We want to make sure that our voting is proper. People that are allowed to vote. And we, sure, we want to care for people, but we have to demand those things through our local representatives, through the people that represent us. And this is why, again, I'm going to get into this as we go on here, centralized power versus distributed responsibility. That being said, I tend to jump around a lot, so let's go back. Exposure helps some, but history kind of shows us the same pattern. When truth comes out, people are angry, they're outraged, institutions stall, and very few are punished. Like, people don't get the punishment that they actually deserve, and that's why spiritually, don't worry, everything goes around and comes around. They're going to get their time in court, if you will, on a spiritual level. The system mutates and it continues. So by staying in that same system, we're not actually making positive progress. We're just continuing the negative cycle. Yeah, it's just like you watch the news, and for about a week they're angry about something, and then the next week it's something else. And so it's not productive. So the deeper question is, why aren't they held accountable? It's like, what's actually going to collapse these corrupt systems? How do they go away? So when we're looking at it, we're going through, these things don't happen through outrage or things like that. They fail when these things happen at scale. And I'm going to kind of list them out here. Again, I've used AI to kind of help me channel my thoughts and go through and kind of build this structure. So we lose them when we stop putting our attention on it. When we feed it with fear, reaction, all of those things, we're just continuing the negative cycle. We get emotionally charged, and it just keeps going. Everything's crazy again for a week, and then all of a sudden, bye. You never hear of that again, and it's gone on to the next thing. Number two, parallel structures outperform them. So when we build better systems, we immediately have made something better, and we start to go in that direction. So if you don't like something, build something better. And that's how everything goes. Companies, anything. When you build a better product, people will naturally use that better product, obviously, unless it's bought for, paid for, and then shelved. I mean, a lot of medical companies will buy great products because they want to make money, and then they shelf them because they're actually going to help people. So it's like, is that good? No. And so it's like, when we look at those, even that's a perfect example. That's a system we don't like when we actually want to help people. So once people stop becoming products for certain things, we can move forward in a better way. I like to call this beat them on the scoreboard. I had an old hockey coach, Andy, good guy. He always said, beat them on the scoreboard. So, don't retaliate. Don't fight them, with your fists, because that doesn't do anything. That just gets everyone revved up. Beat them on the scoreboard. Go put the puck in the net. Go get the touchdown. Go kick the goal. Whatever you got to do, that's how we beat them. We beat them by building better systems. New models work better. People migrate. Old systems become obsolete, and power drains from them without fighting. So with that, again, going back, we have the next thing, number 3, internal fracture, not external attack. These people are psychopaths, and psychopaths turn on each other. They do. They naturally will turn on each other because they're looking out for themselves. They aren't about the collective. So when you allow infighting and exposure of these contradictions, and you pin this guy against this guy and these things against these people, they will naturally take themselves out. External pressure accelerates the collapse when internal coherence is already failing. So these people are already scared. That's why they're, it's the age of enlightenment. We're going through this process of changing the systems, and they're afraid. So they're going to try to hold on to power however they can, and they're going to lose. Like, that's, love beats everything. Love beats hate. Love beats, all of it. So they're naturally, like, what you're seeing is just the effect of it. You're seeing polarizing effects, and it can't end up with one or the other. It can't end up with left versus right, Canada and America. It can't end up with these two extremes. It has to end up somewhere in a better balance of it all. And I know that I'm around a lot of left-leaning people. A lot of my family is left-leaning. I used to be more left-leaning until kind of the left drifted so far that it kind of lost sight of what it was all about, and it started name calling and things. Uh, Again, it's not about left or right. It's not about these things. It's about being able to look at something and say, how do I actually feel? We don't want to tie our identities to things. When we tie our identity to things, those things, when they're attacked, even if not actually being attacked, if they're just criticized, when our personal identity is attached to that, what ends up happening is our emotions come out, and we fight. We fight back. We feel like, oh, our back's up against a corner because I've attached my identity to this thing. And that's why I've even had to remove myself, my identity, from politics. Like, even though I might, lean one way or the other, it doesn't matter, because I don't attach myself. When something is attacked on that side or criticized, I don't, my identity isn't tied to that thing. So I'm not angry. I'm like, I'm looking at it and I'm saying, can I understand why they're being like this? Or can I understand why this is happening? Yes. I take a moment. And sometimes I get like a little bit of, I just need a minute to process, but then I go through the process and I say, you know what? I can understand this. I can appreciate this. Even, for instance, last night, perfect example, the Super Bowl, the halftime show. I was like, hey, it's America's 250 year, it's Super Bowl 60. I thought there might be some English. I thought they'd be a little bit of a balance between that. But at the same time, I can respect and appreciate that Puerto Rico's culture was highlighted and Spanish was highlighted, and love over. I can appreciate all that message. Even though I'm like, it's not anti-American, because that's an American colony. So obviously, where it can get tricky is when there's so much tension already, and it's gonna pin these people against these people. It's not about that. So if you remove yourself from this, you can just appreciate what it is for what it is. Now, do I think sports should have politics and all this stuff? No, but again, when you're just watching a good halftime show, I thought the halftime show was pretty good. I thought it was I call him short hair, or a little bunny, but I know it seemed like he put on a good performance, and heck, there was a lot of great stuff going on, and in that, it's I don't know. I take it for what it is. Like, it's like if you're gonna watch an action movie, again, obviously not the same, but if you're gonna watch an action movie and you get mad because there's not a plot, well, it's the same thing. It's like you just went for the action, right? So we're just going, we're just watching a good music halftime show. Obviously, if you don't speak Spanish, it's a little bit hard, but you can understand it. Nothing, no problems there. Anyways, I've drifted too far. Why focusing on stopping evil often backfires? Well, when a consciousness fixates on evil, it's going to mirror the energy of control. It's going to reinforce enemy identity. It centralizes power because we're opposing it, and it keeps people reactive instead of creative. Creativity, creating new things, is how we move forward. Movements fight corruption, end up becoming energized by it. They spread its symbols. They recruit through outrage, and you exhaust your own people. And so that's not weakness. That's physics. It's just naturally going to happen. So when we're looking at an aligned high level consciousness, I don't see it personally in my best interest or my energy to focus on that stuff, because I like to beat them on the scoreboard by helping others, and the system will inevitably cave in on itself. It's already caving in. If you don't understand from a spiritual perspective that we are making progress, like, we're making progress, guys. I know it doesn't seem like it. I know things seem crazy, but we are making amazing progress. And it doesn't matter what side of the coin you are. We are making progress because we're saying, hey, this is what we're willing to accept. This is not what we're willing to accept. There is a balance between maintaining a border and proper ways of procedures of doing things. Again, I'm native. Like, my people, I'm both the attacker and the attackee. I understand things from all perspectives. It's so and it's so difficult, but it's like, okay, we're not going to let the past define us. How are we going to build the future? We can't, it's like, here's where we are. How can we, the best way to move forward to atone for mistakes is to create a better future. How do we honor our ancestors? We create a better future. That's how we do it. We don't dwell on the past. We don't look at these things. We say, here's what's happened. Here's where we are. We don't want to repeat our same mistakes, but we do have to move forward in a positive direction. And we create a better future. If you had $1 million to give your grandkids a better life, and they can never repay you, how's the best way they can repay you? Well, the best way that they can repay you is by using that money and ensuring that they have an amazing life, and they, make sure that their kids and their grandkids have amazing lives too. That's how you repay people. So, whether your ancestors were slaves, whether your ancestors were colonized, whether your ancestors, did the attacking or did, certain things, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because you are you, and most of us have not experienced that stuff, at least in Western civilization. Most of us have been blessed not to have to experience some of the downside. Now, again, some of that has touched my life, my wife's family. Some of that stuff, the oppression and things have touched our family. But from an ancestral perspective, how do we move forward? Well, we create better lives for our kids, better lives for ourselves, better lives for our community and our future and everybody around us. That does come with some rules sometimes, and some agreed upon rules. To live in a society, we have to agree that we're going to be productive members of it. If we're in a village and you decide, hey, I'm not going to work ever, and I'm just going to sit here while everyone else is gathering food and making shelter, you're quickly going to be isolated from the group and be like, hey, can you do something? Even making art, can you do something productive that is going to help us survive? Because that's just part of being in a community. You can't just be lazy and do nothing. Obviously, there's extenuating circumstances for that. There's people that are handicapped and can't do stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about moving forward when you are capable of doing it. We have to create. We have to produce. We aren't just consumers. We have to produce. Going through this isn't like we're not spiritual bypassing. We're what's happening is it's evolutionary pressure. We're not ignoring corruption. We're starving it through beating them on the scoreboard. Again, I find all these AI stuff sometimes makes it all kind of sound similar, but I'm just using this as a framework to be able to guide my thoughts through it. Essentially, when we're acting in alignment with our consciousness, and we have a strategy and we're creative about it, we can go forward and we can make a better future for ourselves. We stay informed. We don't stay immersed. So this is the path forward now. When we stay informed without allowing our energy to digest it, we allow ourselves to stay flexible. We allow ourselves to stay movable. We allow ourselves to go through and really take a step forward without diving in. We understand what's happening. That's it. Next, we're going to build what makes the old obsolete. We're building new systems. We're being better. We're ending corruption through irrelevance. We're not feeding that negative system with fear. We're building better structures so they can collapse internally. We're going to model those better structures through different ways of being in power. There aren't many great examples right now of positive power. The natives, my ancestry in particular, Mohawks, we had 3 levels of government. We had the Bear Clan, the Wolf Clan, and the Turtle Clan. And the Bears, would make the decisions, and the Turtles would, kind of put in the guidance, and then it was a whole thing, right? And so when you're going through this process, what are we good at? Where can we model better leadership? how do we go through that? How do we go through that process and model better behavior? Well, we model better behavior by being better. I know it sounds like so silly. It's like obvious. We be better. If we sink to the same level of the people and we punish them the same way, we fight them eye for an eye, like that's not what Jesus or all the wonderful spiritual leaders taught. That's not what was taught. What was taught was modeling better behavior. If I want my child to follow my instruction, I have to model it. I can't just say, oh, you need to be fit. I have to model fitness. I can't just say, you need to go to bed. I have to model how to wind down, how to put my child in a place where they're able to relax their body so they can go to bed. Those things have to be taught. You have to model proper behavior. And when we're modeling better behavior, when we don't just get angry, we don't just fight. It's not all about just fighting. A lot of times quiet power is actually the positive way forward, because people are going to look at you and say, what's different about your life? What's different about what are they doing differently that's allowing them, with all this chaos going around, to be a better person, to not be stuck or caught up in all their craziness, to be moving forward and to be living by example. Like, what is it? And so your life becomes a model for better things. So we're modeling how to protest properly, even if that's something that it interests you, obviously. And then fourth, accountability becomes secondary. Acknowledging that, the people that we want, it's the punishment that we're craving, it's never going to happen the way we want to. So if we tie ourselves to that, if we depend on that outcome, we're probably going to be disappointed, because those people, again, they've been in power for so long, they understand how it works, and there's going to be scapegoats. That's just what happens. So we can go after certain people, we can hold them accountable, we can do that stuff, but that becomes secondary. That's not primary. We have to make better systems and model better behavior. That's how you do it. Oh, man. Awareness without entanglement is staying informed and not immersed. Again, number 2, build what makes it obsolete. Old collapses after new is functional. Internal fracture, not external attack. External pressure accelerates collapse only when internal coherence is already failing. Focusing on stopping evil backfires. I already went through this. We're not going to energize it. We want healthier communities. We want all of this stuff. We're going to model different ways of being in power. Corruption is often a trauma response scaled up. People who wield power without fear, greed, domination quietly rewrite what leadership looks like. So if we're not trying to wield power with fear, greed, domination, we're showing a better example. This is why grounded leaders scare corrupt systems more than protesters. If you become a grounded leader in your actions, in your community, in your home, in your life, we create more leaders. We're going to create more leaders through that process. And when you're modeling the better behavior, people will naturally fall in line and the system will collapse. Accountability is secondary, because justice comes late, it's incomplete, it's imperfect, and it becomes symbolic rather than the total of what we're looking for. We will never get what we want out of punishment and out of justice. Even the people that get to, the people on death row that somebody's murdered their child, it might make them feel fine, but they're still missing their child. They're still missing something. And it becomes the side of healing, it becomes forgiveness, because punishment and justice never, it never quite is satisfactory, because it's just a negative cycle of you do this, escalation. We're escalating. We have to de-escalate, and that comes from one person being the bigger person and offering forgiveness and moving forward with love. And it's not love for them. You can still feel you're still a person. You still feel all this stuff. But what we're not going to do is we're not going to allow that person or that corruption or that energy to hold power over us. We're not going to identify with it. We're not going to allow it to suck us dry. Consciousness level reframe. Instead of, if they aren't held accountable, something is wrong, we're going to say systems that no longer serve life lose relevance and collapse in time. Let's play the long game, friends. Play the long game. That's how we win. You're here to outgrow the cage and help others do the same. We're not here to play executioner. High-level consciousness doesn't look loud at first. It looks like people opting out, quieter lives, better choices, parallel worlds forming, old systems screaming as they lose grip. History only later calls it revolution. Sometimes a quiet revolution is okay. You're not wrong for choosing creation over combat. You're playing the long game. You're seeing something very real, and the reason it feels confusing is because most political conversations are framed incorrectly. It's not left versus right. It's two different fears trying to solve the same human problem, and both of them are correct. Getting more into the left and right conversation here. I know this is a long video. I'm sorry. If you're still here, congratulations. The core tension we're sensing. How do we allow humans to be free without letting the worst parts of human nature destroy everyone else? Left and right are responses to different dangers. They're not good versus evil. They are order fear versus chaos fear. Both sides try to control. Left's fear, if we don't protect people, the powerful will exploit them. So left builds safety nets, regulations, supports centralized systems. Where it goes wrong. Protection turns into dependency, then into permission, and then into behavior control. Care ends up becoming control. It's unintended, but it's a predictable pattern that we've seen throughout history in so many countries. So many countries that are communist, just look at them. This is exactly the playbook, and it's what's happening in the UK, it's happening in Canada, it's happening across. And then you have the opposite in America that's happening. And again, neither of them are right. Like, neither of them are perfect systems. Here's the right sphere. If we restrict freedom, innovation, and responsibility, collapse. So the right pushes personal freedom, minimal regulation, individual responsibility. Where it goes wrong is freedom turns into power concentration, then exploitation, then rule by the strongest. Freedom, therefore, turns into dominance, also unintended, but predictable. These same patterns emerge on both sides, and that is the pattern, left versus right. They both end up in control, just in one hand or the other. So which hand do you want to play? Again, you might have a natural inclination, depending on who you are and everything, but the problem is they both end up leading into systems that nobody wants to be a part of. The hidden truth most people miss. Neither side is wrong about the danger they're trying to prevent. And this is why when you're getting angry at the other side, you're like, I'm angry, but it's like they're also on that side saying, I'm angry about your side, because they're seeing the same patterns, whether they grew up that way, whether they've been taught that, whether it's like these patterns end up emerging throughout history on both sides of the coin, and it's predictable, and so we have to have a better balance. They're wrong about thinking their fear is the only one that matters. So neither side is wrong about the danger they're trying to prevent. They're just wrong about, again, thinking their fear is the only one that matters. This is why every system drifts into authoritarianism, authoritarian eventually. Left authoritarianism is bureaucratic control. Right authoritarianism is corporate elite control. Different costumes with the same outcomes. It's the same playbook over and over. The real axis isn't left versus right. It's coercion versus sovereignty. Here's the reframing that unlocks things for you. Left versus right. These are false battlefields. Let's just not even play this system anymore. And it's not freedom versus safety either, because that's a false dilemma. It is centralized power versus distributed responsibility. And I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. Centralized power versus distributed responsibility. Why pure freedom still produces evil. I've got to go soon. Now that's going to be on for the next 5 minutes. I'm so sorry. You're right. You're absolutely right to sense this. Unrestrained freedom without shared standards leads to exploitation, monopolies, abuse, environmental destruction, erosion of trust. Because not all humans are equally developed, freedom without maturity becomes predation. So the question isn't should freedom win, it's what conditions make freedom safe. The missing piece, developmental readiness. I'm not going to be able to use my brain here, so now I'm just going to end up reading because I'm going to get distracted by that. But I've got 5 minutes left, and to get past my whole thing is there's just so many things set up. The missing piece, developmental readiness. This is the part of politics politics refuses to talk about. Humans exist at different levels of psychological and moral development. Now, that's a huge one. People exist at different levels of psychological and moral development. That's why in other countries, when people are mushed into one, it is difficult to maintain a system of healthy standards because people are not at the same moral development, and they're not at the same development levels of psychological capacity. And that's okay. That's not wrong. We're not saying somebody is stupid. We're not saying somebody is wrong for these things. What we're saying is they're just at different developmental stages. That's why some areas have expanded drastically and other areas have not. It's the peaks. And so it takes evolution. It takes time. It takes new environments and people within those systems to want to change. And it's not right or wrong. It's just a fact. And so when you stop denying facts, you can look at things from that level and say, how do we like integrate these systems in a more positive way? Well, it's like not flooding the country with one group from this one area. You have to bring people over slowly in time and teach them how to do things your way. You have to teach them how your society works, and that goes for any society. Whether when you're bringing people over, you have to understand that they are different, and that's not a judgment. They're just different, and so it's like we have to teach people. Okay, these are the rules here. These are how things work. These are when this happens, here's how we typically feel. You have to train them. And so that takes a lot of effort, a lot of energy. So you can't just like flood the system and expect it to not change, because it's going to change in that direction. Because now you flooded the system with people who live a completely different way somewhere else. So it's like, it's not, the problem isn't bringing people. The problem is bringing a bunch of people all at the same time and not supporting them. The missing piece. So some people can self-regulate, think long-term, care about others, handle freedom responsibly. Others externalize blame, act impulsively, exploit loopholes, need structure to function. One-size-fits-all systems always fail. They do not work because we are not a one-size-fits-all person. We're all different and culturally different. And the way you were raised, I was raised with hockey. You might be raised with cricket. You have a totally different life experience in a totally different country. Or even if you lived here, you've had a totally different experience because you stayed with your own group of people. That's the thing. It's like when multiculturalism is great, but part of multiculturalism is celebrating each culture as their own individual culture. And when we mush a culture out, when we stamp a culture out, it's like if I moved to Africa, it'd be great to be around people that understand, hockey and Tim Hortons and all that stuff, right? Because that's just what I understand. That's how we were going to navigate and get along, but that's not what happens. So when people come here, it's the same thing. They want to be around people that are like them, and that's totally understandable. And so we have to support them to also understand and start to integrate into the broader culture of what being a Canadian or being an American or being a British citizen is. And so when we're just collapsing these systems really, really quickly, we're just causing chaos. These people don't function the same. They don't have the same moral capacity. They don't have the same development in those senses. So what does a healthy, balanced system look like? Well, it's not left, not right, it's layered. Freedom as a default. Adults are presumed capable, minimal interference, high autonomy, strong property and speech rights, freedom of movement, thought, enterprise. This honors sovereignty. 2. Non-negotiable standards. Non-negotiable universal standards, sorry. Not moral ideology. Behavior lines. Violence, fraud, abuse, environmental poisoning, exploitation of minors or dependents cross the line. Therefore, they equal consequences. This is clean, fast, and fair. This prevents predation. 3. Supports that build independence, not dependence. We don't want to build more dependent people on the system. We want to create independence. Here's the key distinction. Support that replaces responsibility does not work. Support that restores capability is what works. So examples, education instead of endless welfare. Mental health treatment with accountability. Rehabilitation with skills and expectations. Temporary aid with clear exit paths. Support should sunset, not entrench. We don't want to become more entrenched in our behaviors. We want to allow them to expand. Power must be distributed, not trusted. This is huge. Evil does not come from ideology. It comes from unaccountable power, fear-based control, dehumanization, and moral certainty without humility. Every system that forgets this recreates the same monster. You lean towards freedom because you trust human potential. That's aspirational. You're wise enough to see freedom needs maturity, maturity needs culture, culture needs values, and values cannot be forced. Your instinct to build parallel healthcare systems instead of winning political wars is right. That's how real change happens. A clean guiding principle for your vision going forward. Maximize freedom while minimizing the damage one person can do to another. Not zero damage, because that's impossible. Not zero restriction, because that can become dangerous. Minimal necessary constraint. Maximal human agency. The future won't be won by left and right. It will be shaped by people who refuse false binaries, hold opposing truths simultaneously, build systems that evolve, and prioritize sovereignty over ideology. We're not confused. We're standing above the chessboard. That's how it goes. That's how we beat it. We move forward. We build better systems. We model better things. We distribute responsibility. We do not centralize power. Neither side is good. We have to build better systems where communities are empowered and we understand and we can make rules. We don't have suicidal empathy where we think everybody acts, and that's naive. That's just not how life works. We have to move forward in a positive direction. Love you guys.